Welcome to the Hey Chaplain podcast. My name is Jared Altick, and I'm a chaplain with the police department. This podcast is for cops and for everyone interested in law enforcement culture, careers, and wellness. On Hey Chaplain, you'll hear from dispatchers and federal agents, sheriffs and U.S. Marshals, as well as the occasional former police officer who served time in prison. From the LAPD to Scotland Yard, the guests on Hey Chaplain share their own experiences so that police officers everywhere can survive and thrive. I've been looking for an interview, maybe a series of interviews, about the influence of our fathers on first responders and those who support first responders. While searching for this, I came across Tzvi Levin, a federal law enforcement chaplain in Chicago, who spoke beautifully about the impact his father had on him as a Jewish Navy chaplain during the Vietnam era. Listen closely as Tzvi talks about what it was like to be the son of a rabbi in the South, and notice the connection between his father's service and Tzvi's own life of service as he talks about his time volunteering with the feds. And don't miss what Tzvi and I talk about as a central component of being a chaplain, the opportunity to bring someone closer to their faith. Here's Tzvi Levin. I'd like to know more about your dad and what he did in chaplaincy. How did he get into that field?
Well, it's funny. I always like to say that a chaplain is not always a rabbi, but a rabbi is always a chaplain. Because a rabbi goes, I remember my father going, now, most of the time that he was a chaplain, he was in, we were living in Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay.
And he was the chaplain. He went to, of course, all the hospitals. And he went to one of the big places he went to was St. Jude's Children's Hospital and this Millington Naval Air Station, which he spent quite a lot of time at. I think that's where I saw him doing most of his chaplain work. I was raised in Memphis, but we were there from like when I was 2 until I was 14.
Oh, wow.
But
okay.
I knew what he was doing. Well, I for sure remember when I was like 6 or 7, to start off, I guess, with one story about what my father did. My father gets a call, I think it was a Saturday night at around 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning. And apparently a sailor had decked an MP. And he was a Jewish sailor, and my father had to go and bring him bail money to get him out of. Now he wasn't in the brig. He was in a little small town. You have to remember, this is in the 60s.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So, you're like thinking Mayberry RFD, and he told my mother, and they got me all bundled up. And even at 6, 7 years old, he took me and my mother, and we drove out to someplace outside of Millington, I think it was. And we went to the sheriff's station, and the sheriff let my father meet with the sailor, and told him what we had to do. Told him he had the bail money, and my father and the three of us, we had to go to the sailor's trailer park, and it's dark. And we found this guy's, my father was walking around. Now, the funny thing is, my father didn't have a flashlight with him.
Okay.
And I had one of these toy plastic helmets that I took with me, because I figured, hey, cool, we're doing something interesting. And it had a pull-out flashlight in the helmet. And he's my father, give me the flashlight. So I reached out, pulled the flashlight out, and he went looking around for the sailor's trailer. And he found the trailer, and there's no way to get in. So my father had to try and break into the guy's trailer. Oh. And of course, who comes out with a shotgun? The trailer park owner. So my father, of course, had to show him his credentials and everything. Make a long story short, he found the money. It was sitting on a dresser. We went back to the jail, and my father paid the bail. And the funny thing is, and I will never ever forget this, the sheriff had to sign the receipt with an X, because these guys up there in those days, it was really, really? Everybody thinks Andy Griffith, but this guy really didn't know how to write.
Oh, wow.
And how he got to be a sheriff, I will never understand.
It's an elected position.
Whatever. Yeah, exactly. No, but you're talking about let's see, I think Millington, there was not a lot of built up built up areas around there. So it was like, woods. I mean, I remember the trailer park was in the middle of like forest or woods.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, for people who aren't familiar with the geography, tell me, like, what part of the country is this in, and what would be a nearby city?
Well, we lived in Memphis. We lived in Memphis, Tennessee, and Millington was not a long drive. It was just up, as we Southerners say. It was just up the road.
Yeah.
This was really the first story that I understood what my father did. And he was there for everybody. I mean, he took care of the sailors. I mean, I remember my Passover. We have what they call the first 2 nights of Passover. Mm-hmm. We have what's called the Seder.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and it's called the order. It's what we do. There's a whole thing of what we do with this Passover Seder.
Someone tells the story, right?
And someone tells the story, exactly. I remember for years, my father and mother, we always had sailors at the table.
Really?
But yeah, because in those days, they didn't, except maybe for like in New York, places like that, they didn't have accommodations for the Jewish sailors.
Sure.
In, for having these, religious requirements. And my father and my mother, every Passover, I mean, for years, they had sailors coming over to them. Can we come to the Seder? And they would invite people. I mean, it was really awesome. It really was.
Was your father actually in the Navy?
No, he was not.
Really?
No, he was not.
How did he?
He was a civilian chaplain for Millington.
Okay. So, which also explains why he was there for so long.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my father built a synagogue in Memphis, and we like I said, we were there for 12 years, 13 years.
So how did he make that connection? Did the local, naval base reach out to him, or did he apply?
Yeah, you get connected, because what they do is they go to the nearest large city that has Jewish people.
Right.
And Memphis at that time had a very, very nice community.
Okay.
Very nice community. And my father was the Orthodox chaplain, and he, they called him, and he went up there and he did what he had to do for everybody.
Sure. So I presume that even in the 60s that, you're talking maybe 1 out of 100 sailors is Jewish, I'm guessing. And so is it lower than that, higher than that?
No, it was probably higher than that.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
I have a very close friend that was in was he in St. Louis or New York? I really don't know now. he was in the Army back in the Vietnam War.
Right.
And they had quite a few Army, Navy, there were a lot of people that were, a lot of Jewish boys were in the service.
So did that expose you to different, forgive me for not maybe knowing the correct terms, but the different varieties, the conservative or Orthodox or whatever? I mean, you would have seen probably the whole cross-section of Judaism.
Yeah, but don't forget, I mean, I've been Orthodox all my life, and in Memphis, in the schools that we went to, it ran the gamut. I mean,
really?
we had Reform, we had Conservative. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I got that from school.
Okay. So what drew your dad to accept that responsibility of taking care of these sailors in Western Tennessee? I mean, what made him want to invest that energy and that effort and love those sailors?
This is who my father was. My father and my mother were both. I mean, they would help anybody that needed it. It's in their blood. I mean, my father he was soft spoken when he needed to. He was very, very good with the people of his congregation. We have a term called Baal Tshuva, somebody who returns to Judaism. Okay. Now that's somebody who was not religious, but wanted to turn their lives around and become more religious.
Okay.
Let me tell you something. We have a friend here in Chicago who has a girl that is married. They have kids. My father made these people religious.
He made them religious in the sense that he had a real impact on them and helped them reconnect with their faith.
I mean, there's like 4 or 5 generations now, I think, of that family.
Oh, wow.
That are still religious.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's fantastic.
And they're not the only ones. I mean, some of our closest friends from Memphis, my father, they were going to the synagogue that my father was in, and they wanted to become, more and more religious. And now they also, I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there's like 4 or 5 generations of that family also that are still very Orthodox.
Yeah. The
Hebrew word is kiruv. I'm asking. Oh, okay. So my wife just said, "Bring closer." So it's
okay.
It's good to have her.
Yeah, but he helped bring people closer to their faith.
Absolutely, to their faith. 100%.
I've got some serious respect for him because I know from dealing with young law enforcement officers that some of whom are in the military, that young military people can be frustrating because they don't make the best life decisions, and it can be. Kids? Yes, I do. Yes, I have 5 kids. Yes.
Well, you know what frustrating is.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I got 3 of them right now that are college age, and I can imagine dealing with these sailors in the 60s, you said, and just all of the freedoms they have and the pressures they have, the Vietnam War era.
It was the drug generation.
Yeah.
The 60s and 70s.
That's not an easy group to love.
No, well, it's not. I mean, and I mean, I remember going to these people's houses. I mean, you're talking about long-haired. I mean,
right.
You're talking like hippie type people. But these people, I mean, they wanted to become. My father started in Memphis an organization called. They had it in New York. They had it around the country, but we didn't have one in Memphis yet. It was an organization called NCSY. It's National Conference of Synagogue Youth. He started the organization in Memphis, and I remember having kids there of all types. You're talking about troublemakers. I mean, but they all wanted to have more.
Hmm.
They all wanted to have more. And my father, helped them along that way.
Were you ever jealous of the attention he was giving these people? Or did you see that in a different way even as a kid?
I think my parents, I hate to pat myself on the back. Okay. I really,
but if they raised you well, maybe you understood it in a different light. Yeah.
They raised me well, and they explained to me. Look, I think the term is a latchkey kid.
Okay. Sure.
My father was, of course, the rabbi. He had his rabbinic duties. Mm-hmm. Okay. My mother was a teacher in the religious day school.
Okay.
And she taught. And in my younger years, before I would go to school and come home with my mother, I would come home to a nanny.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And my mother and father they weren't home that much.
Right.
Okay, because my mother also helped my father with the synagogue.
Wow. Oh, sure.
Okay, so I came home to a nanny, but it's like an open table. Mm-hmm. We discussed things, and of course, I heard what they were doing. But my father and mother also explained to me how important it is, which is why I think I wanted to get into the chaplaincy.
Well, see, and that's what I was going to ask. I was going to ask if that was the thing that then led you to a life of service, that you would want to help others because of their example. Right.
Yeah. Well, what happened was, this might seem a little weird. I used to own a kosher Chinese restaurant here in Chicago.
Okay.
And one day, so I'm going to step back a little bit. Years before that, I was working in one of the Jewish bookstores. Okay. And a guy comes in a uniform. He was a Cook County Sheriff Sergeant. Name was Larry Davidson. Love the guy. Anyway, and he comes in. He comes over to me. He says, "Tzvi, I want a yarmulke. A yarmulke is the skull cap that we wear."
Right.
And he wanted a leather yarmulke, and he wanted the Cook County Sheriff's logo painted on it.
Okay.
And we did. Yeah. We had a girl in one of the schools that did that kind of thing. We made it for him, and we got to be very, very friendly. And one day he said, "How would you like to go shooting with me?" And I go, "Okay. Of course you'll have to teach me, what to do." And he did. We went out to this range in one of the west suburbs, and we shot. And we were with a bunch of other sheriff's deputies, and they're the ones that taught me how to shoot.
Wow.
Anyway, so when I had this kosher, the Chinese restaurant, he comes over to me and he says, "Would you like to go to what they call here the Shomrim shoot?" Now, I don't know. Law enforcement has they're called Shomrim, it's a fraternal society. Okay. And these guys are all Jewish cops and federal agents. Okay, it's what I call the gun-toting boys. It's not for administrative,
Yeah.
So he says, "Would you like to go to the Shomrim shoot?" And I go, "Yep. Well, why not?" So we go, and I took my turn, and we shot 30 rounds, and then we went upstairs and we had lox and bagels. Oh. And I saw some guys sitting at a table. And one of the guys had this skull cap on, the yarmulke. I went to go sit with him, and we were sitting there talking and schmoozing. And I told him what my father did, that he was a chaplain and everything. And it ended up that these guys all worked for the Treasury Department.
Okay.
So these guys were all feds. They were all, the gun carrying feds.
Right.
And they asked me, he says, "Something, we need a chaplain."
Huh.
And I go, well, my father, showed me a lot, when he was a chaplain. Can I do it? And they said, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I work for an organization called FLEOA, FLEOA. It's Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association.
Okay.
We are volunteers, and I have a letter from the president of FLEOA at that time, thanking me for my volunteer work. And they did send me, we don't have picture IDs, but they sent me a card that had my name on it, said clergy on it. And, whatever I needed. And that was it. That's really how I got into the chaplaincy for the federal government. Any federal organization that needs, our help.
So do they contact you after like a critical incident or?
Yeah, if something, right. Okay. If something happened, you want to know something? The first call that I had was some guy was supposed to take, I think it was an FBI exam, and they were giving it on Saturday, and he was Orthodox.
Okay.
And we can't take exams on Saturday.
Sure.
And the funny thing is, the federal government should know this.
you would think.
I mean, religious laws, and we took care of it.
Excellent. So you were able to advocate for him, and
oh yeah, for sure.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah, I've heard. Like, I have some contacts with like Border Patrol. What I've been told is they won't even allow a chaplain access to their people unless they're already a sworn Border Patrol agent. And I don't know how other agencies treat that. So I was really curious about how you had access or what kind of hoops you had to jump through.
Around here, I'm in Chicago. We don't have much use for Border Patrol. But,
yes.
unless we don't want somebody coming in from Indiana. But I mean, who knows?
Right.
I've spoken to a bunch of, let's see, who did we have? The FBI agents, Housing and Urban Development, HUD, ATF, a bunch of people. Unfortunately, the ATF person that I had contact with had to come to my house because our house was arsoned one day.
Oh, wow.
So that's how I got talking to the ATF guy.
Oh, wow. So what kind of things have they used you for? Can you give an example of a situation where they would turn to you?
I can tell you they'll use me for anything. Okay. Here in Chicago, I remember there was one time I was listening to the radio and there was a shooting. Some feds and I'm pretty sure it was the police department went down and they had to serve warrants. And that was the big thing of that day. A bunch of guys got shot. And I said, oh my God, just, please don't make it one of my guys.
Yeah.
I mean, don't make it anybody, but you already knew somebody was shot.
Yeah.
So I just said, please don't make it one of my guys. And it was coming up a couple times that it was a Fed. It ended up not being. So thank God. Now I talk to people. I see, when I go downtown, I see a lot of feds downtown. We go to FLEOA meetings, which I really should, after COVID, I should really start getting back into. It's interesting. I mean, because you meet all these guys at the FLEOA meetings. I met one agent went with the head of HUD to Israel.
Okay.
And we were talking about that. I mean, I think I was talking to him the whole meeting. And I was talking to FBI agents that were down there. The guys that were in the Treasury were down there. I mean, these are interesting guys. I'll tell you something funny. I used to be a kosher supervisor. and this is even before I got into chaplaincy.
Okay.
I was a kosher supervisor, and they had a banquet at the Marriott downtown. You have to understand, one of the speakers was, I forgot if it was the president of Israel, one of the high-ups in Israel. Well, that was the first time I ever met Mossad guys.
Oh, my. Okay.
And let me tell you something.
These are the secret agents from Israel, right?
These are the big guns in Israel. Anyway, I see one of the guys with it looked like, I knew it was a gun case. And I figured, it was automatic weapons or something. Who knew? Anyway, that night was some kind of playoff games in basketball. So after everybody was settled into their rooms, a bunch of the Mossad guys came to my room and we watched the basketball game.
Sure.
And I asked the guy, I says, okay, you were carrying that downstairs in the kitchen. I want to know what it is. And he said, let's put it this way. If something happens and we have to get out of the building, this will get us out that back wall. I go, okay, very nice.
Yes.
And I just stopped the conversation there because I didn't know how much these guys wanted to say. Yeah. I knew what you were talking about. Don't worry.
Yeah. Now, when you're dealing with federal law enforcement agents that are not Jewish, how do you feel like you're received? I mean, do you feel like you're received well in that community?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Absolutely.
No, nobody's ever saying, "Oh, sorry, you can't help me. I'm not Jewish."
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, we help everybody.
Excellent.
It's really funny. Unfortunately, these past few years, crime has risen in the neighborhood that I live in. And it's funny because I think now I talk to more police officers than I do the federal guys.
Right.
And the funny thing is, the police chaplain lives 8 doors down from me. He's a very good friend of mine. Also Orthodox, Jewish.
Okay, that was my next question. If he was a Jewish chaplain,
100% Orthodox. I think he's got kids living in Israel. He's got kids here. Yeah, just a super, super guy. Black belt in karate. I mean, he's a good guy. He really is. Yeah. Like I said, we take care of everybody. I mean, why should I take care of one and not the other? I mean, if somebody needs you and you're in this kind of position, you do what you can. Yeah. We're all human beings.
Yeah. And these federal agents and the police officers, and the sailors that your dad ministered to, they are under such tremendous pressure, life and death pressure. And so they need people who are willing to encourage them and support them and answer difficult questions about life and death and everything else. And so that is tremendously important.
Yes. I mean, I enjoy it. I wish I can do more. I can say this honestly. Thank God I don't hear much in the way of my guys getting hurt.
Yeah. Well, it's easy to get attached when you're serving and loving these public servants. It's 100%. It's easy to just be really worried about them. We had a shooting recently in my city. I heard it was an officer-involved shooting, and that's the first thing I want to know is well, were any of my officers hurt? And even if they're not hurt, I mean, they might be traumatized by what they went through. But I mean, my knee-jerk reaction is, are they physically safe? And I just can't rest until I know that they're physically safe. And then everything else we'll deal with later. Yeah.
Later, right. Yeah. First thing I want to know is, are my guys okay?
Yeah. Absolutely.
No, excuse me. Let me put this a different way. Not are my guys okay, are any of the people that responded okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, because we've got to take care of everybody. Mm-hmm. I mean, It's very important. These guys are doing us such a service.
Yeah.
And I hate to bring this into the thing. When I hear these people, defund the police and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Oh my God, come on.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know what they're thinking. If you tear something down, you better have something to replace it. And I feel like some of these people say these reckless things without having a plan. We need people to protect our communities and to uphold the law.
They have a plan. Their plan is social workers.
Yeah, that's there's not very many places that would work.
No, you think?
No,
not really.
No. Yeah.
I want to see somebody go into, I don't know any of the worst neighborhoods in your city, but I know you don't want a social worker going into Englewood and saying, did you have a bad father, in your house or whatever? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Well, the people a guy's beating on his wife.
Yeah. The people saying this just may not have any real understanding of what domestic violence looks like, or what people with, drug problems or having a, mental health crisis, they just don't know what that looks like. And so they're maybe speaking out of ignorance there. But,
right.
Yeah.
Right. 100%.
Well, Tzvi, I so appreciate you telling me about your father. What was your father's name again?
His name was Arthur.
Okay.
And his Hebrew name, which is what most people frankly called him Rabbi.
Right.
Rabbi Levin. I got to tell you, I did too. I called him, my family always says, you always called, do you know what a Zaidi is? It's a grandfather. It's a grandfather.
Okay.
My kids, who are, of course, were his grandkids, always heard me call my father Rabbi.
Uh-huh.
Sure, I mean, this is who he was. I mean, he was the epitome of being a rabbi. He was if you need a rabbi, this is
the guy you wanted, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And he helped, I mean, from the synagogues he started off in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. From there to Memphis, back here to Chicago. I mean, he was always helping people, and he was the executive director of my rabbinical college. He was what we call a shoichet, a ritual slaughterer.
Okay.
He was very community minded.
God bless you, and God bless your father.
You too, sir.
And
thank you very much.
I appreciate you sharing with me today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, absolutely. God bless you. Thank you. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I was absolutely delighted to talk to Tzvi. It was really great to get to know him, and it's also great having a resource like him for all my questions regarding Judaism. I also tried to do some research to figure out exactly what percentage of the Navy was Jewish during the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. I was frustrated to find conflicting numbers, with the averages around 1.5% to 2%, maybe slightly higher during the Korean War and slightly lower during the Vietnam War, but I'm really not certain of any of that. What I did find consistently was a long history of a prejudicial stereotype that Jewish men supposedly never served in the military, which, of course, is not factual. Tzvi's father could have certainly testified to the contrary. On the next episode of Hey Chaplain.
Let me say this, Jared. Every officer, whether they know it or not, or even want to accept it, they're a community policing officer.
Yeah.
Because even though you're on patrol, when you're patrolling and you're not on a call, you can stop in that grocery store or that mom and pop store and say, hey, how y'all doing? Everything going good? Any problems, any concerns? Because if you don't get out your car and go in there and have that conversation with them, you never know what's going on in their life or what problems they may be having. They may be the type of person to go, or business owner to never call the police, and they are having problems, Yeah. I mean, you're the officer that need to stop and go inside that school.
The views expressed here are the personal views of the host and our guest and do not necessarily represent the views of any law enforcement agency or its components. Please go to find Hey Chaplain on Facebook and Twitter, and if you found this show valuable to you, please share it with a cop or someone who loves a cop. Thank you for listening to Hey Chaplain, and as always, pray for peace in our city.